beautiful green forest all year round, so we're quite lucky. The forest looks complex and it looks mature. I'll tell you, it is mature, but it's not very complex. Our forest is dominated by just 4 species. You got western red cedar, Sitka spruce, Douglas fir, and hemlock trees. That's it. Evergreen, cone-bearing trees. They keep their needles all year round, so again, beautiful quality of life even in the winters here. This plant you see in the water is kelp. I'll talk about that in a little while. It's easy to mistake it though for river otter. That's about their size and shape. So as we go through the long brown animals in the water, running along the shoreline, and you can look for deer here in the forest. And there's a great blue heron that hangs around on the dock, and there's a couple kingfishers that we see on occasion flying along the canal. The 2 islands are reconnected back in the 1940s, 50 years after they cut the islands in half. They decided to reconnect them with a little bridge. It's a car bridge or a bicycle bridge, and if you're going to come and cycle in the Penders, they're 2 of the more challenging islands. Lots of hills on these 2 little islands. You can ride between the 2. They built the bridge, I think, the same year they brought electricity here to the islands, 1948. As we go under the bridge, it is low tide, so you might want to look for some of the invertebrates that live in these waters. We have pretty cold water here most of the year, 6 to 8 degrees centigrade, 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So our invertebrates grow to massive size. You can find sea stars bigger than your head. There's beautiful purple color to our sea stars. You can see them in the mud bank right there on the port side. You might want to shelter your eyes as you go under the bridge because we have sea squirts growing on the columns, and those are mussels that can shoot water a meter into the air. And even in the corners of the rocks, you might see some of our purple sea stars, purple, pink, yellow, beautiful colors. The invertebrates grow to big sizes because they need to maintain their body warmth, so they need to have a lot of body mass to surface area to stay warm. And what a perfect time to go through at the low tide to see all that. Lots of kelp in the water here. This aquatic plant is a cornerstone for the ecosystem. The kelp floats around all winter long on those big bulbs, and then it anchors in the water in March or April. 30 meters of water, about 100 feet it can anchor in, and then it spreads out and creates a giant kelp forest. And that kelp forest gets colonized by little fish, which bring in the seals, which can bring in the mammal hunting orca to hunt the seals. So it's a cornerstone of the ecosystem. The reason we slow down is because of these beaches over here. There's some archaeological middens on the beach, and when I say archaeology, you guys are from Europe, you're probably thinking 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. Not here on the northwest coast. I'm talking 150 years ago. That's our ancient history. That's when the First Nations had control of these islands, and they used the beaches as cooking areas, which we call middens, or places where they disposed of their refuse. And we learned from studying the middens that the people that lived in this area were the largest bodied of all the First Nations in North America, and they had the most well-developed economy because they were not transient people. They lived here all year round, sedentary. They made their homes from cedar wood, permanent long homes we call them. They did not live in teepees. If you travel through these islands in the summer, you're going to see lots of teepees on the shorelines. That's because kids come for summer camp and they want to live like the Indians, so they think they have to live in teepees. The First Nations in this area never lived in teepees. They had permanent homes, much like our own, and they had their economy from the ocean. They gathered up the fish from these waters. Salmon was an important resource, but not the most important. There was a fish called houlican, or smelt, which is still around in some very low numbers, but it used to run through these waters in the tens of billions. But the smelt has been all wiped out by increasing sedimentation in our rivers due to increasing timber production. And you're not going to see that smelt running like it used to, but the First Nations people here took the smelt, they would melt it down into a grease, a fatty paste that they actually would trade with the Indians that lived in Alberta and Montana, the people who did live in teepees and followed around the big game herds. They didn't have a lot of fat in their diet,